Hi guys, this is help with Math Excel additional practice. I'm going to go over a few of these questions just so you can see and understand them. I'm not going to actually solve them on the screen, but I'm going to tell you what you need to do in order to get the answer just in case you're struggling. So here we have x plus y equals -2. That's written in standard form. So all we have to do in order to get the x-intercept is to replace the y with a 0. So you would put a 0 in for y. If you put a 0 in for y, all that's going to be left is x equals -2. So your point or your x-intercept will be at -2, 0, because y was 0 because you substituted in x is -2, so -2, 0. Do the same thing for the y-intercept. For the y-intercept, all you have to do is put a 0 in for x. If you place a 0 in there for x, you'll get y is -2. So your coordinate pair or your point would be x is 0, y is -2, so it would be at 0, -2. Once you have those two, then you can connect those to the x-intercept and the y-intercept, and it will draw your line for you. Okay. Another example that I wanted to show you is one that looks like this, just because I want to make sure you're okay with seeing this standard form. But you'll notice out front that it says 5/3, and in standard form, you're not allowed to have a fraction as the leading coefficient. So you're not allowed to have the fraction as the a being 5/3. In order to eliminate that, put parentheses around the entire equation and multiply multiply it by 3. So multiply everything by 3. You're always going to multiply by your denominator, because when you multiply 3 times 5/3, it will eliminate the 3's and you end up with just 5x. 3 times 2y will be 6y. 3 times 5 will be 15. So you'll essentially have 3x plus 6y equals 15. And then once you have that, then you can find your x-intercept and your y-intercept by replacing the opposite variable with 0. Okay, another one that I thought you may struggle with, so I'm just going to help you out with it, is one that looks like this: x equals -5. Well, guys, if x equals -5, and I know for Team A, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. If you have an x or a y that's just by itself, x equals -5. If you take a look at this graph over here, if I want to know x equals -5, well, here is -5 on the graph right there. So here's how you're actually going to draw that. Okay, that's actually what your line is going to look like. And let me explain why. Because no matter what point you select on here, you can select this point or this point or this point, any point that you select on the line, this is going to be -5, 0, -5, 1, -5, 2, etc., and etc. So notice that the x value is always -5. So therefore, anytime you see x equals -5, you are going to get a line that is known as undefined. And we talked about undefined last week in class whenever we talked about our slope tree. So x is always undefined, y is always no slope. So if we wanted to do a y, we could turn this and we could take it this way. Let's say y is -3. That would be y equals -3 right there, because every single point that's on that line is going to give you 1 -3, 2 -3, 3 -3, even -6 -3. So your y value is always at -3. So if you see x only or y only, that should indicate to you that you're either going to have a vertical line or horizontal line. And remember that if you're not sure of if it's vertical or horizontal, just pretend that every x value in this case would be -5, or every y value over here would be -3. And you can actually, in your brain, kind of think of what is that line, then what is it? If all the y values are -3, then it has to be a horizontal line. If all the x values are one thing, then it has to be a vertical line. Okay, and here's the last question that I want you to see, and that is this, because this is a weird one and it's a little bit difficult. It asks you to change this ax plus by equals c and solve it for y. Well, what this actually is, guys, is back a few lessons ago, we talked about literal equations. So if I want to just put the y all by itself, I want to get y all by itself, and I want to type an equation, I'm going to write y equals. Now, I would put this on a piece of paper, Remember the get y all by itself. The first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take ax and subtract it from c. So it's going to be c minus ax. And if you write this down on paper, you can see it. I can't write on the Chromebook right now. Okay, and then the only thing that is left with y is b. So this is multiplication, so I would divide both sides by b. So I would actually get an equation, and again, you got to type an equation. So it has to say y equals, and in this case, it's going to be y equals c minus ax over b. Okay, that's the equation. Now, once I type that equation, c minus ax all over b, then it's going to ask you another goofy question. Okay, it's going to say in terms of a, b, and c, the slope is what and the y-intercept is what. Okay, so here's what you got to do. You've got to turn this into slope-intercept form. So go back to ax plus by equals c. If I turn this into slope-intercept form, okay, I have to first subtract ax from both sides because we want to get the x on this side because we're looking for y equals mx plus b. Okay, and if I do that over here, I'm going to have negative ax plus c. Okay, and then in order to get y all by itself, I'm going to divide everything by b. So in terms of the slope, I'm going to have negative a over b, and the y-intercept is simply going to be c over b. Okay, that is just a form of literal equations, and I'll help you out in class if you need help with that. So there are a few other things possibly on this math additional practice that you may see pop up that you may not understand right away. But just remember that we've done all the things in algebra class so far in order to help you with these things, like literal equations. How can I get y all by itself? That's why we did that. So when we reach these linear equations, then we can understand them better and get and see and move things around correctly in math or algebra.